Texas House Democrats are in Washington, D.C. tonight, leaving the special legislative session in order to break quorum. We'll explain more and have reaction from around the Brazos Valley. Plus, College Station business owners, listen up. A relaxed ordinance on signs for local businesses is going to start being enforced again. More on that coming up.
Most of the thunderstorm activity today has been across south central Texas over into southeast Texas along I-10. A few of those storms may creep in this evening across our southern counties, but overall looks like we're looking a little bit warmer over the next few days. Your 25 News starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Naya Gonzalez. Thank you for joining us at 6 o'clock. Tonight, the special session is in limbo. The state Senate is business as usual, while Republican lawmakers in the House have voted to arrest their Democratic counterparts who took off to D.C. KRHD News reporter Rachel Espaillat spoke to a local lawmaker about this battle making national headlines.
Texas Democrats in the House are so determined to stop a voting bill which they say suppresses voter rights, they went straight to the nation's capital to fight it. Republicans, meanwhile, say the Democrats are turning their backs on Texans. Tuesday was meant to be a day filled with House of Representatives voting on a variety of bills in Austin, but that plan was derailed when more than 50 of the Democratic representatives were missing.
It was pretty disappointing that our colleagues would walk out on the citizens of Texas and not allow us to conduct our business.
The Democratic representatives left for Washington, D.C. Monday after opposing legislation that would ban drive-through and 24-hour voting options and further restrict voting by mail.
The bills, as written, makes it harder for Texans to vote and easier for partisan poll watchers to harass and intimidate voters.
The Texas Democrats are also demanding federal legislation to prevent bills like this from moving forward.
We are always going to push back against these sort of bigoted, racist, Jim Crow 2.0 style voting laws whenever you decide to bring them up.
In a 76-4 vote, representatives back in Austin voted to authorize the arrests of the Democrats who took off for D.C. Lemon said opposing the bill did not warrant Democrats neglecting other bills on the table.
Let's make sure we put our heads together and solve the problem for the citizens of Texas. And you don't do that by walking out on your duty.
This special session is slated to go on until August 7th, but Governor Abbott says he will continue to call special sessions until the job is done. In Bryan, Rachel Espaillat, KRHD News.
This isn't the first time that Texas politicians fled across state lines in legislative battles. The last time it happened was in 2003. Democrats were trying to block Republicans from redrawing congressional districts. More than 50 Democrats fled to a hotel in Oklahoma, and when the time for the bill expired, they came back. Governor Rick Perry later called a special session, and 11 Senate Democrats went to New Mexico. But after a month, one person returned and the redistricting plan passed. The House gavelled in this morning at 10 a.m., but they didn't meet quorum. So what is quorum and when can it be broken? Well, quorum is the number of members required to be present for the legislature to conduct business. In both the Texas House and Senate, 2/3 of elected members must be present. Now, quorum can't be broken until the House or Senate officially starts a session. When the Democrats left the state on Monday, it was an effort to break that quorum. Well, back here in Brazos County, the city of College Station says they've been sensitive to the struggles that loomed over local businesses, including sign regulations. As KRHD News reporter Hannah King shows us, some signs are allowed, but some aren't.
The sign ordinance has been in place for over 10 years. During the pandemic, to help businesses out, enforcement efforts were relaxed. Now, code enforcement officers are re-educating businesses about the ordinance.
No clue, but it's going in the back of my truck.
Meet Julie Kaler, a code enforcement officer for the city of College Station. She looks for city code violations.
Whether it's weeds and grass, your trash cans being left out, open storage, or like we're talking about today, off-premise signs, temporary freestanding signs, illegal signs.
Enforcement officers say the sign ordinance was relaxed as they let residents throughout the community know businesses were still here.
Now that the governor has opened everything up at 100%, we're going out and reminding our businesses that the sign ordinance is still there and that they need to comply with that ordinance. We have a freestanding temporary off-premise sign at this intersection. Normally, we would contact this business, but since it's out of town, we're just going to go ahead and pick it up since it is an illegal sign.
Kaler says the sign ordinance makes sure certain signs are permitted and the ones that are not allowed, like small temporary bandit signs, are not out cluttering and causing visual pollution within the community.
So a sign that would have a permit would be this one right here. It's a permanent monument sign. Usually those get permitted when the business comes in and wants to start up and have something more permanent. Beside them, the garage sale sign, those are not permitted. Those are not allowed at all.
If the city finds signs are in violation of the ordinance, they try to educate before trashing.
Like what happened Tuesday morning on University Drive.
The owner knew that the laws got relaxed, but was just kind of waiting for the reinforcement to say, hey, pick up those signs. So now I'm doing it.
The last thing that we want to do is issue that citation.
One sign at a time, Kaler is removing distractions and hazards against right-of-ways within our streets. Reporting in College Station, Henny King, Krhd News.
A Brazos Valley family is hosting a donation drive to help kids in the area. The drive is also memorializing a young Brazos County resident who died 3 years ago. Krhd News reporter Rebecca Fiedler takes us inside Kicks for Kids.
When a College Station teenager died in a car wreck in 2018, his family was devastated. But his special love for collecting shoes has inspired a community effort that could make a difference for so many students. Wendy Williams' son, Jason Wright, was killed in a car accident near Tyler in 2018. That day, the community lost not only a former football player for A&M Consolidated High School, but a friend and loving family member. As Wright's family searched for ways to cope during the grieving process, his mom reflected on one special interest the teen had.
So one of the things that he started to love very early on, from age 10, was shoes. So when he got his first pair of shoes at our house, it was one of the most exciting things for him. And so as he got older, that just kind of was a bright spot, something to look forward to.
With the help of some local connections, Jason Wright's family have started Kicks for Kids, a shoe drive benefiting College Station ISD's program, Chrissy's Closet. Pairs of newly purchased shoes, sized for kids and grown teenagers, can be donated all month at Elms Orthodontics in College Station, Daniel Stark Law Firm in Bryan, or Living Hope Church College Station. Anyone interested in honoring Jason Wright and giving shoes to students in need can also visit the Facebook page, Kicks for Kids BCS. Remembering Jason Wright. Reporting in Bryan, Rebecca Fiedler, Krhd News.
A controversial new Alzheimer's drug is under review by Medicare. The agency is deciding whether or not to cover Aduhelm. Now, it's not because of its $56,000 a year price tag, but because the FDA granted approval, even though outside experts recommended against it. That's based on the fact that it only helped a small amount of people. Right now, Medicare is considering covering the drug on a case-by-case basis. Now, there is a separate independent investigation into how the FDA came to approve this drug. Meanwhile, a new study is showing early stages of dementia may first show up behind the wheel. Researchers monitored 65 and older people's driving habits for a year, and they found those who had early stages of Alzheimer's drove less overall, and when they did drive, they drove slower, also to fewer unfamiliar places and less at night. The results helped develop a model that could determine the likelihood of someone having preclinical Alzheimer's using just their age and GPS driving data, and it proved to be 86% accurate. All right, we're hearing stories of long-haul COVID patients struggling, some even being dismissed by medical professionals, but there are programs out there that work.
I had a lot of the complications from COVID, so fighting back hard to come back and being very appreciative of all the care I got.
Ahead, the COVID Rehabilitation and Recovery Program the CDC is studying and where it's available.
The FAA is giving Jeff Bezos' company approval to launch humans into space on his new Shepard spaceship. The decision comes just days before Bezos' launch, set to take place July 20th. He'll fly with his brother and 82-year-old Wally Funk of Grapevine, who trained to be an astronaut but never could actually go to space. An unidentified auction winner who paid $28 million for a seat will also be on board. The whole trip will last about 11 minutes. And speaking of billionaires in space, Elon Musk has reserved a ticket for a future flight on a Virgin Galactic craft. That's according to Virgin CEO Richard Branson. The Sunday Times reports Musk put down a $10,000 deposit to book a seat. No word yet on when that launch will actually take place. Right now, a 1-hour trip on a Virgin Galactic space plane goes for $250,000. Meanwhile, out west, extreme heat and record drought are creating favorable conditions for 58 major wildfires. The Beckworth fire in California is scorching nearly 90,000 acres. So far, destroying at least 20 homes, forcing residents to flee the area. And in southern Oregon, the Bootleg fire threatening a major power grid connecting Oregon and California. That fire has doubled in size every day for the last 3 days.
The sea breeze front from southeast Texas making its way through the Brazos Valley, and that's bringing some scattered showers and thunderstorms as they progress from the Gulf Coast up toward the northwest, and those will likely die out as we approach sunset. But again, a few splash and dash thunderstorms possible here and there throughout the evening hours. And our future track showing those making their way through the north to the north as we head through about 10 o'clock. I think things really start to die down. But again, a few rumbles of thunder will be possible, maybe some gusty winds and some of the stronger thunderstorms. Then we get into Wednesday morning, mostly cloudy skies to start off the day. Partly cloudy in the afternoon, and guess what? Maybe a few more isolated sea breeze storms coming in from the southeast, so we will be tracking that potential, and some locally heavy downpours, some gusty winds be the main threat with those. Then we get into Thursday, and yeah, we'll probably do it again. Maybe a few more isolated to widely scattered thunderstorms as we head into the afternoon hours. So tonight, temperatures will be dipping down into the 70s, 75 for Bryan College Station, 73s around us, around Hearn, Caldwell, and over toward Anderson. Then tomorrow, highs into the lower 90s, right around 91 degrees for Bryan College Station, 90 in Franklin, 89 in Cameron, as we will be seeing some of that heat around, but at about 5-6 degrees, and that's probably the feels like temperature when you factor in the humidity around here. And we will continue with that as we will have isolated thunderstorm chances pretty much each and every day. The sea breeze front coming from southeast Texas moving up into the area, allowing for those showers and thunderstorms. I'll raise it a little bit on Friday, maybe a slightly better chance there. Then we get to Saturday and Sunday again, throwing in some isolated thunderstorms each and every afternoon, highs into the low to mid 90s. This is actually pretty typical for this time of year. And we'll probably increase the rain chances just a little bit again as we head into next week. It will all be determined on where a cold front settles down across the area. Does it stay just to our north? Does it come into the area? So we'll play with those numbers as we get closer, but at least it may come down a little bit into the low 90s. And right now, no 100s are in the forecast.
More than 1 in 4 people who contract COVID will develop long-haul symptoms. This is according to multiple studies. And it's happening to all sorts of people, regardless of how sick they got. And in many cases, recovery can be equally as challenging as fighting the virus.
Every day was a struggle. I was in bed for 33 days. I couldn't walk. All my muscles atrophied. I had lots of complications. I had foot drop. I had nerve damage, muscle damage, diabetes, lung. My SpO2 levels were really low.
Diane Shields is a COVID survivor. The home dialysis nurse got severely ill back in April of last year. She ended up on a ventilator for almost 2 weeks. After that, inpatient rehabilitation for a month. Now, luckily, she was immediately referred to an outpatient rehab program that was created specifically for COVID long haulers.
I'm a nurse, so I'm used to taking care of others. I'm a type A personality, so I'm used to control. So when all that was taken away from me, it was like I either had 2 options, sit there and be sad and feel sorry for myself, or be positive and fight through it.
We needed a much more comprehensive response. It couldn't be a cookie cutter, one size fits all response to the pandemic.
Alan Evans is talking about Select Medical's recovery and reconditioning program. This is video that they gave us of Shields going through this program that is tailored specifically to physical and mental health services based on a patient's long-haul symptoms. Now, in the first of several studies with the CDC, Select Medical compared COVID patients with those in similar cancer recovery programs.
It was really striking that the patients who were recovering from COVID-19 were reporting poorer physical and mental health than the patients in our cancer recovery program. They were complaining of more impact on their daily functions, so their ability to do their chores or their job or just go up and down the stairs.
COVID long haulers needed more therapy treatment than cancer survivors, and their tolerance to rehabilitation can fluctuate a lot.
All the therapy helped me. It's just that there's stages you go through. Like they kept saying to me, it's baby steps. You're going to go forward and then you may go backwards. Don't get discouraged.
Select Medical will have future research coming out on the best approaches to COVID long haul rehab and what patients can expect. Now, insurance does cover the treatments. Select Medical has nearly 2,000 locations across 37 states. Everything just keeps getting more expensive. New numbers out today from the Consumer Price Index show inflation went up 0.9% in June, which is now more than a 5% increase since last year. The auto industry continues to account for most of the inflation we're seeing, and that's car rentals, used cars, and gas. Those are the three items topping the list for the most when it comes to price hikes. Then you have laundry machines, airfare, and hotels. You may also start to see the price of your morning cup of coffee go up as Brazil is now facing one of its worst droughts in almost a century. The world's largest coffee producer is now seeing plants wither, accounting for the biggest output slump in 20 years. Now, the price of Arabica coffee beans traded in New York have gone up 18% in the last 3 months.
It's an agreement that you have to sign as a condition of employment that basically says if you leave here or if we fire you, you cannot work at another similar industry, at another similar firm for a certain period of time. And furthermore, you can't start another firm that does a similar thing to what we do for a certain period of time.
What Heidi Scherholz from the Economic Policy Institute just described is what's called a non-compete agreement. The Federal Trade Commission is currently considering a ban on them after an executive order from President Biden. It's part of the administration's push for economic growth. Non-competes can hinder competition, driving consumer prices up and worker wages down. It's a move that can impact low-wage workers, especially which the nation is seeing a shortage of right now. In a 2019 survey, EPI found 30% of companies with hourly wages below $13 an hour required employees to sign a non-compete. It's something that could be keeping people out of the workforce right now.
It means that no matter how much you raise your wages, you can't get workers because they are locked in with non-compete agreements.
Higher paying employers like tech firms argue that non-compete agreements are necessary so former employees can't share secrets with competitors. But Scherholz says this can be achieved in other ways.
You can do that through other kinds of agreements, like non-disclosure agreements, other kinds of trade law that don't have the negative properties that non-competes do.
Any changes from the FTC and non-compete agreements could still take several months. A handful of states already have some sort of rule in place. California, North Dakota, Oklahoma, and the District of Columbia are close to a total ban. Others prohibit them for our low-wage workers. Now, you've seen the hiring bonuses that more companies are offering right now. The latest incentive could be a better job title. We're getting answers on what perks actually come with that. You should continue to have a lot of options if you're looking for a new job this year. More than half of U.S. companies plan to add new permanent positions in the second half of 2021. Another 48% plan to fill vacated positions or bring back furloughed employees. This is according to a new survey that's out today from talent solutions firm Robert Half. Now, people who've been in business for decades say they've never seen a war on talent like it is right now. One incentive to watch for that you may not have heard about is just getting a better job title to get you in the door.
What we're finding is that existing employees as well as new employees, prospective employees, are being offered new job titles, changes in the job titles, in addition to those other areas, sign-on bonuses or additional bonuses for existing employees to help retain their services.
40% of companies tell Robert Half they're offering better job titles. Now, this could be changing a title from accounting assistant to staff accountant, for example. Now, something to watch for with this, the new title may not mean better pay.
I think what we're seeing is that, you've got salary bands within organizations that have to be adhered to. you've got existing employees that, you can't just bring somebody in at a higher pay that doesn't have additional experience and they're at the same level.
But companies believe just having that recognition with your job title will be a big part of retention. Now, the number of people quitting jobs has been increasing, but hiring experts do warn if you're looking to switch careers, it's going to be difficult right now without getting some new skills. Now, as more zoos look to vaccinate animals against COVID, we're talking with the company behind that shot. We're looking into how it's different from human vaccines and whether we could see it for our pets in the future.
Well, choosing a place to live used to be simple. You would either rent or buy, but now short-term rentals are starting to affect real estate markets across the Lone Star State. Our Dennis Turner investigates.
Carlotta Herrera has lived on this quiet Waco street since the 1940s and the end of World War II.
What was it like back then? Peaceful.
After her husband's release from a German POW camp, they settled down here to raise a beautiful family.
Oh, everything's changed.
Now, not only have the children left to pursue their own lives, the neighbors left too, leaving the street eerily quiet many nights. The sights and sounds of a normal street happen here only sporadically as the new temporary neighbors come out. Temporary because they only live here a few days or a week or two at a time in one of the many B&Bs or short-term rentals within shouting distance.
They're friendly, people here and here. When we have new ones, they always say hello.
But that's part of the problem. Every few days, the new neighbors move in for their temporary stay. And so it goes with a never-ending circle, a circle that some fear has caused this neighborhood to start circling the drain. Mrs. Herrera's concerns have, or soon will, become the concerns of her more distant neighbors, predicts downtown neighborhood president Andrew Lopez. He says the idea behind businesses like Airbnbs got its start with families who rented out extra rooms, like the Waco family that turned a den into a spare bedroom for Elvis Presley while he trained at Fort Hood.
So how many of those became something else?
In my neighborhood here, I would say an average about 20 of them we have actively right now within a 3 to 4 block range.
A quick run around Central Texas and the Brazos Valley shows you can't hardly escape the proliferation of B&Bs. The Waco area has perhaps the most, including one that goes for more than $1,000 a night, and another up the road that goes for more than 3 times that. And if you have to ask why the Brazos Valley feels the sting of the B&Bs, well, you obviously don't know anything about A&M football, like the median income of its fans, or how often they make a weekend of it with an almost $600 a night short-term rental when the team plays at Kyle Field. Lopez says his downtown neighborhood has become overrun with short-term rentals. If you don't think short-term rentals have begun to crowd out some neighborhoods, watch this. This is Miss Herrera's house. Short-term rental across the street, short-term rental down the block, and short-term rental next door. Yes, she's surrounded by them. And while the constant change they bring leaves Mrs. Herrera always wondering about the new neighbors, studies have shown the businesses contribute to a host of problems, pushing rents higher as inventory shrinks. Waco City Councilman Hector Sabito and his colleagues initially welcomed B&Bs as a way to bridge a gap between the need for hotel rooms and a tight supply. But now, with more hotels preparing to open, they started to tighten their ordinances to close exploited loopholes.
I think there are some parts of the city where they do make sense, especially in commercial areas. STRs make perfect sense, but there are some other cases where in the neighborhood you don't want to have a street of 5 to 10 STRs because it's definitely, now you're messing with the preservation of the neighborhood.
What do you call a neighborhood without neighbors? B&B owners took this family block and replaced it with a revolving door, leaving Mrs. Herrera to wonder which other neighborhood will lose its neighbors next.
Have a good neighbor, that would be great. But I don't know who's next door or... You never know who's next? Or who's next.
Dennis Turner, 25 News.
Taxpayers who received unemployment benefits this year should not expect another tax break next year. That's according to financial experts. It's because jobless benefits are usually treated as taxable income, but the government waived the tax on a portion of those benefits last year. Since many people might not get the tax break this year, it's important to take steps now or plan ahead. Visit the IRS's website for more information. Tonight, the Stars take the field in Denver for the MLB All-Star Game. WATW's Zach Taylor joins us now with more sports.
Here's your 25 Sports Update with WTAW Zach Taylor.
Hey KRHD viewers, make it 4 Texas A&M baseball players taken in this year's MLB draft. After seeing teammates Dustin Signs, Bryce Miller, and Will Frizzell taken yesterday, Aggie left-handed pitcher Chandler Joswalk was picked up by the Miami Marlins today in the 13th round. The reliever from Brenham appeared in 28 games for the Maroon and White this year, going 2-4 with a 3.48 ERA. Meanwhile, Rudder High product Hunter Dobbins was picked up in the 8th round by the Boston Red Sox. Dobbins was slated to be a weekend starter for Texas Tech in 2021, but suffered an arm injury before the season. New York Mets slugger Pete Alonso took home his 2nd straight home run derby title last night, edging out Baltimore first baseman Trey Mancini. Texas outfielder Joey Gallo was an early exit, falling to Colorado's Trevor Story in the 1st round. Now, of course, the All-Star Game is tonight at Coors Field, with Max Scherzer making the start for the National League and two-way sensation Shohei Ohtani going for the American League. First pitch is at 6:30 in Denver. And the U.S. men's basketball team dropped its 2nd straight Olympic exhibition last night, falling to Team Australia 91-83. From the WTAW Sports Studio, I'm Zach Taylor.
House prices are increasing and inventory is decreasing across the country. Landlords are cashing in with short-term rentals and hot vacation spots. But that's making it hard for lower-wage workers in these towns to actually live there. Vanessa Mishania shows us the solutions that some areas are trying.
Cape Cod, a New England coastal paradise synonymous with sunrises and expensive beachside hideaways. To Allie Du Bois, however, Cape Cod is simply home.
I married a lifer, so here we are. I married a Cape Cod boy.
Allie has lived in the Cape for 12 years. For her husband and son, it's the only home they've known. Between the two parents, they work 6 jobs to make it stay that way. Despite their hard work, however, their lives here could be coming to an end.
You can't truly think about anything else when you're facing homelessness. It's really scary.
On May 1st, they learned their landlord is selling their rental and the Du Bois need to be out before August. And finding a new place has become nearly impossible.
It's not like we're not looking, but there is nothing.
And we are slowly but surely losing huge numbers of our workforce.
Hadley Letty heads the Cape's Homeless Prevention Council, one of the housing advocacy nonprofits here. They coordinate resources for residents who are on the brink of losing their homes, and recently they've hit a hard truth. There's barely any places available to send people.
And that question of where can I go becomes a really tough one for our team as boots on the ground to basically say there really isn't anywhere to go.
Across the country, house prices are increasing and inventory is decreasing. Hadley says that landlords are also learning, especially in places where people vacation, more money can be made through short-term rentals through apps like Airbnb. In Cape Cod, the pandemic has only made this problem worse for the working class.
We saw this huge influx of people purchasing houses, and that's really driven a crisis to a tipping point.
According to the New York Times analysis of post office data, Barnstable County, or Cape Cod, was the 4th most popular destination for urbanites to move to full-time and embrace the remote work life last year. Hadley says she is seeing houses being bought sight unseen, and in some cases for up to $100,000 above asking price, making it nearly out of the question for the year-round workforce to compete for housing.
We have got to address this problem and address it quickly.
Jay Coburn is the CEO of Community Development Partnership, another local housing nonprofit. He says the solution is simple.
We are going to have to build our way out of this problem.
The means of getting there is not. At Hole in One, a bakery and eatery, the owners have found one creative solution to the housing problem to maintain their workforce. Build it themselves. 5 employees now live in a house that owner Ken Tabor bought.
But if you don't have the labor force to service those folks and their demands, then you have to make a financial decision.
Even with that investment, Ken says that he's had trouble keeping a full staff and has had to cut back on operation hours. Other businesses, he says, have had to close on days they'd usually be open.
If businesses start failing or start dropping off because the labor isn't there for them to survive, I don't see how the community benefits.
Other solutions include using funds from a short-term rental tax to build affordable housing or to incentivize current homeowners to rent long-term to locals. Some towns in the Cape have already voted to make that happen, but nonprofits say it needs to happen across the board.
Also need to make much more of a plea to our local residents and our new neighbors that are joining us here to say we have to pay attention. We have to find ways to really incentivize people to rent year-round to our local workforce.
Meanwhile, Allie continues to wait for that one solution that will keep her family in the area they love.
People just need some help. No one's looking for a handout or to be entitled. I'm willing to pay. I just need somewhere for my family to go.
I'm Vanessa Mishanya.
All right, Vanessa, thank you. And toxic blue-green algae blooms are showing up in a growing number of states. We're going to talk about the efforts underway to figure out if just breathing the air near that algae could put your health at risk.
We have seen a few scattered showers and thunderstorms move in from the southeast and along the sea breeze front. Those will continue to ride to the northwest and eventually die out this evening. And by 10 o'clock, things should be pretty quiet around here. As we get into the morning hours on Wednesday, partly to mostly cloudy skies for us, then we'll maybe do it again. A few isolated thunderstorms creeping in from the southeast again Wednesday afternoon. Probably say the same thing for Thursday as we're in this pattern of sea breeze thunderstorms moving in from southeast Texas, possibly making as far north as the Brazos Valley as we make our way into the latter part of the week there. So tonight, temperatures will be dipping down into the 70s. We'll go about 75 for Bryan College Station, 73 in Brenham, and 73 in Hearn. And then high temperatures mainly into the lower 90s as we get our way into our Wednesday. And it does appear that the humidity will make it feel like it's in the mid to upper 90s, close to 100 degrees. So still quite humid out there, but it could be worse this time of year. So we will take what we can get during the month of July, even though it's still pretty toasty. And it will stay that way going into your 10-day forecast. 91s Wednesday and Thursday, 90 on Friday. About 20 to 30% chance of some scattered showers and thunderstorms each and every afternoon. We'll keep that into your weekend with highs right around 92, 93 degrees. Next week, there'll be a front getting into Texas. Does it get this far south? That's going to be the big question. So right now, we'll put about 30% chances of rain Tuesday through Thursday. If that front comes a little farther south into our area, those rain chances may go a little bit higher. Temperatures could go down. So overall, not a bad July forecast.
Topping the news feed, cyber attacks are on the rise and working from home may be a reason why. Cyber experts say that companies need to do more to make sure their employees' connections are secure at home. A study found that phishing, malware, and ransomware events jumped from around 5,000 a week last year up to more than 200,000 a week in April. Now, South Korea is taking one of the more unique approaches to try and stop the spread of COVID. Fast-paced music is now banned at gyms. Songs with more than 120 beats per minute cannot be played. This is all in an effort to cut down on heavy breathing from cardio. Well, today marks a year since the Washington football team dropped Native American imagery, and the team will now have a new name in 2022. It's unclear what the future name could be, but the team's president said this week it will not include any Native American references. That includes the name Warriors. The football team moniker will remain for this season. The U.S. market for hemp is expected to triple by 2027, and hemp production is ramping up in some places that you might not expect. Tomorrow, why farmers who typically focus on citrus are now turning to hemp instead. But still to come today, the new plan for how schools can safely reopen and stay open.
Yeah, it feels so weird, but it did not hurt me so much.
He's talking about the COVID test that he just got, the changes to how this testing will work for kids in the fall. The newsfeed starts with a pledge from Amazon. The company says it will hire 100,000 veterans and their spouses by 2024. Amazon says the jobs are specifically geared towards veterans and helping them transition into the private sector. Fans will not be allowed at the Summer Olympics in Tokyo. But First Lady Jill Biden will be at the opening ceremony, which will take place on July 23rd. COVID is still a huge concern in Japan, which is under a state of emergency. Boeing is cutting back production of its 787 because of a structural flaw. The company says it will now deliver fewer than half of its 787 orders this year as a result. Production flaws have caused the company to pause deliveries on this twice before. Toxic blue-green algae blooms are showing up across the country. Health officials know that humans and pets should avoid coming into contact with the algae, but what happens if you breathe in the air nearby? As Maya Rodriguez tells us, there is now an effort underway to figure that out.
Inside this air-conditioned lab,
So I'm going to turn on a pump that'll push air through.
floats a summer scourge.
They've been around, we think, 3.5 billion years.
These ancient organisms are toxic blue-green algae, also known as cyanobacteria.
And you can see the clouds of the cyanobacteria moving around in there.
Dr. Barry Rosen is a professor at the Water School at Florida Gulf Coast University. He's one of the preeminent experts in blue-green algae.
We just took our study to the next level.
That study is looking to figure out what happens when blue-green algae goes airborne, and this specially designed machine may hold some answers.
This is an artificial lung in many senses.
Using air to move the water around, filters in this machine capture airborne toxic blue-green algae particles, similar to how our lungs would if we breathed it in.
We know that it probably gets into our nasal passages. How much gets into our lungs? Is it a concentration to be concerned of? Because we find it pretty much everywhere.
That's anywhere freshwater bodies meet pollution from agricultural and development runoff. Coupled with summer's high temperatures, blue-green algae can rapidly grow.
They like warm water. They start making more of each other in warm water, and so that's a concern we have looking forward with a warming planet, is that some of these blue-green algae blooms might be more common than they were in the past.
And potentially exposing more people to more blue-green algae. Just in the past month, blue-green algae blooms have taken hold not just in Florida, but in lakes in Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, and New York, among others.
A lot of these algal blooms are actually indicators that there's something wrong with the environment, and we're the people that are ultimately responsible for doing that.
And the toxins are potentially dangerous.
Well, the concentration that can harm you is very, very low. They're very potent natural toxins. But the aerosols we know very little about, and we're working on that very diligently.
In an effort to keep everyone safe.
We need to solve that piece of the puzzle.
In Fort Myers, Florida, I'm Maya Rodriguez.
Now, in addition to the work that Dr. Rosen and his team are doing, the CDC is also launching a study this month. A growing number of zoos are vaccinating their animals against COVID, and zoos are prioritizing tigers, bears, apes, and other mammals that are considered susceptible to coronavirus. Like some human vaccines, the vaccine for animals requires 2 doses. Researchers at Zoetis, which is the company that made the animal vaccine, says it doesn't use the same technology that's used in some of the human vaccines.
But we basically used a way to make the portion of the vaccine that is needed for protection separately outside the body. And then we combine that with another component which is not in human vaccines, but is common in animal vaccines.
The company started developing the vaccine in 2020 after 2 dogs in Hong Kong became infected. But the company shifted to make the vaccine for other animals that were at higher risk of transmitting the virus.
It became clear that it wasn't necessarily spreading into the companion animals as rapidly, and the US government also was not willing to consider a license application for companion animals.
As many as 75% of emerging diseases originate from animals, which is why it's important for them to get vaccinated as well. The U.S. has authorized a coronavirus vaccine for minks, another animal at risk of experiencing a COVID outbreak. Right now, there is no authorization on a shot for dogs and cats since their risk for COVID is lower, but it is possible one could be developed in the future. As we look ahead to the new school year, states are taking action on vaccines and what will be required. At least 7 states are enacting legislation specific to public schools prohibiting them from requiring either COVID vaccines or proof of vaccination for students. Public health leaders are concerned that this could hurt efforts to control COVID and emerging variants. Meanwhile, the CDC's new guidance for schools is that they should fully reopen in the fall. That's even if they can't take steps to curb the spread of COVID-19. But Chris Conti shows us how a new program is helping schools reopen safely, even if students can't get vaccinated.
Come along to the nurse's office with Braxton.
Good morning, Braxton.
Braxton is not sick. Feels fine, actually.
1, 2, 3. Oh, good job.
And while this 9-year-old has some trouble hearing, Braxton has no problem talking about the COVID test he just got.
Yeah, it feels so weird, but it did not hurt me so much.
This is the Ohio School for the Deaf. the state's only public school serving kids who are deaf or hard of hearing.
This is my birth time, Ashley.
And they are part of a nationwide pilot program working to test kids like Braxton for COVID.
One of the fastest ways to ensure that schools can stay open and we can provide services to our students is to make sure that we're safe. We have quick surveillance.
Toby Reeves Valentine is the school nurse. The beauty of this program is that it enables her to do all the testing right here in school, and results come back within 24 hours.
I see it moving forward to being another tool, like we do our vision screenings. It's another tool for parents, families to feel safe.
For Toby, so much of this is personal.
I wouldn't want that for anybody.
Early on in the pandemic, she lost both of her sisters to COVID, and she's determined to keep the virus from spreading if she can.
Losing pieces of your life, and that's what happens. So, but no, and I know I make them proud by helping other people.
There's another layer to this program as well. Moving into the fall, it will ensure that schools like this one can stay open if cases start to spike again, and if the vaccine still hasn't been approved for all age levels. About 4 million kids under the age of 12 have tested positive for COVID in the last year. They represent nearly 14% of all new cases. Currently, Pfizer and Moderna are conducting vaccine trials for kids between the ages of 6 months and 11 years old.
Even though we all want to be done with the pandemic, the reality is the virus is not done with us.
Mark Stevenson is with Thermo Fisher. They are the ones who collect and test all those samples sent in by the Ohio School for the Deaf.
It takes advantage of federal funding that was made available for testing.
The program is called Ready, Check, Go. And while most of the country is emerging from COVID, testing in residential school environments like this one is still critically important, especially when students are too young to be vaccinated.
We need to be able to track and isolate any cases so that we're not shutting down schools.
These are our students and families, and we want to make sure they're safe and they feel protected, and we're able to keep public education open.
And that might be the most important lesson anyone here can walk away with. In Columbus, Ohio, I'm Chris Conti.
Thanks for joining us for 25 News at 6. Be sure to tune in to our next broadcast at 10. We'll see you soon.